But in a situation where you find that a person look at the situation,
not necessarily tribal or regional.
but I have said that. But in a situation where you find that a person look at the situation,
not necessarily tribal or regional.
but I have said that.
Welcome back. It's now time for us to review the papers, in this segment. And right about now, we have political affairs analyst Mukhtar Suleiman joining us for a detailed review of today's front pages. Good morning, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, so we also have joining us via Zoom, Chairperson, Editorial Board, Blueprint, Hajia Zainab Okino. Good morning, and thank you for joining us, Hajia Zainab.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
All right, so we will begin with Daily Trust newspaper, the front page of Daily Trust newspaper, and we have the lead story that says how infighting cost APC's defeat in Osun. Voters ignore Christian ticket factor. Adeleke's victory inspires PDP, APC ponders defeat. We also have a rider that says people have spoken. Buhari, Atiku, others. At the top of the page, we have mixed reactions over possible interest rate hike as CBN's monetary committee meets. And details of that story can be found on page 23. And then on page 7, we have a story on media trust restructuring. If you want to find out details, you can grab a copy of Daily Trust and, read up on that. We also have Zamfara governor suspends emir for turbaning bandit as Sedikim Fulani. That's on page 6. Plateau bandits, in Plateau, bandits rustle over 1,000 cows in Wase. And we also have Rivers United crowned 2022 NPFL champions, Katsina United Heartland relegated. And there's a pictorial there of PDP members celebrating, their victory in Osun State. And with this, we'll move on to Mr. Mukhtar, our guest in the studio. And can you just tell us, this is actually going to be our main discussion, but if you could just briefly share your thoughts on the Osun gubernatorial elections.
I think if we look at the elections, it's actually a bit of a step up from what happened in Ekiti State, and a lot of step up from what happened in 2018. I think one of the few things that actually got to me the most is the turnout. During the elections, we saw a little above 50% of those people who collected their PVCs turn out for the elections. If you sum up the election, the votes between the both candidates. However, one of the most shocking parts of the whole of it for me has been the election was a shock. Well, not that much of a shock as much as...
You mean the result?
Yeah, the result was actually more of a surprise because, well, not very much of a surprise because if you look at from 1999 till date, in Osun State specifically, you find out that most of the governors, aside from Governor Rauf Aregbesola that has actually done 2 tenures, most of the governors are 1 tenure in, 1 tenure out, and all of them. But we expected that Oyetola was going to survive that. But, well, unfortunately, this is where we are. And the people have spoken, and which is actually a very good thing. And I'm glad when I saw the president's tweet yesterday about accepting the result and congratulating the party, and also speaking on the holding to the fact that this is how democratic processes work, and we should all respect that. That's actually a very good thing. That should curb the electoral violence after post-election violence that we usually see as a norm in the country, and those things are actually going to change, and that's a very good thing for me actually.
Okay, let's step to Hajia Zainab via Zoom. If you are with us, how do you see, what is your reaction to especially the results? Was it something that came as a shock to you?
In politics, anything can happen. So that, for me, rules out that shock part of it. But we didn't see it coming. We thought Governor Oyetola had done well to deserve victory. Unfortunately, the forces against him were so many that commend their transparent for security personnel for not intervening on behalf of any political or political party. So that now allowed the people themselves to decide on who they wanted, and then the result is what we saw. So, like I said, we thought Oyetola did well, and we didn't give. And we also thought again that the emergence of Tinubu at the national level as the OC, and the comments about Hiji that is from Osun State, and this is the time that we can have in APC, including Sharia. So with all this, all was shocking that still voted otherwise, despite the massive turnout that we saw during their rally too. So I think it says a lot about what is coming. There will be more surprises, I mean, I must say, and we should all just, I think, sit down and enjoy it. That's for us as journalists and onlookers. So, but there will be more surprises. And there's an extent people can be taken for granted now, because now we know that INEC is working. And at least in this election, we know that security personnel did not try to favor anybody. There was violence. That means a lot, because has this tendency, especially the election time, what happened at the end, and there was no violence. So let's see what happens next.
Talking of surprises, how much of setback do you think this is to the APC and especially the presidential candidate Bola Tinubu?
Well, I would say, I don't want to say it's an embarrassment, but to some extent it is. It is a setback for them to go back to work. They have enough time to go back to work, to go back to the drawing table and see what went wrong in Osun, whether it could be corrected before the general election next year. But it is a setback that the first election, the candidate of they lost, not just that. So it's a setback, but I believe that they will take a cue from that and plan. Also shows one thing. Tinubu is coming too early for the people. Yes, for the elite. I hope you can hear me.
Yeah, go on,
Okay.
I can hear you.
Okay, so Tinubu is for the elite for almost 23 years. The APC had made the right choice. It has not worked on the grassroots. So, well, maybe whatever he is doing at the top is not getting down to the grassroots, and that really needs to be stressed, that so many things need to be fixed before the major election of 2020.
Okay, now let's come back to Mr. Mukhtar in the studio now. This particular story, the elections, seems to dominate all of the major newspapers in Nigeria today. And there's a writer here that talks about, voters ignoring the Christian ticket factor. Now, would you say competence actually played a huge role in, the electorates voting for Adeleke?
Yeah, actually, the last time I was here, we had, as we did Osun special coverage. I said something about that. I said it is good. It's a good thing that most people are not looking at the religious factor anymore in Osun State. We are now looking more at, is the person okay? We're looking at competencies. We're looking at results. We're looking at the history of the person, as opposed to whether they are religious, they are cultural, and whatnot. And that's actually a good thing. It's a bit of a change from the norm that we had before in Nigeria to this is a new normal. And I hope that we're actually gravitating toward that more, and that shows up more, especially leading up to
The
the 2023 election. I also said something where I said these elections from Ekiti State to Osun State are actually more or less like the pre-season before the Champions League or before the Premier League starts next year. And it's so unfortunate that the Osun State is more or less, for me, I saw that as like a classical match indirectly, and Tinubu lost it in his backyard. And that doesn't bode well for his chances going forward. So I think, like Hajia said just now, they have enough time to go back to the drawing board and see what went wrong and see how they can actually correct most of that.
All right, so let's move on to other stories, since we'll be discussing that in detail the next hour. Now, let's move on to Hajia. Hajia, can you share your thoughts on the story on page 6 on Daily Trust that says Zamfara governor suspends Emir for turbaning bandit as Sadikin Fulani?
When I first read it, do we now have a different, have we carved or has carved out of Nigeria? It's round. We'll be given that time. It's just that the governor moved in to cancel the whole thing, because it's such a big blunder, it's such a huge embarrassment. It's so tragic that I thought the normal thing for somebody to be turbaned or somebody to be given any title, there should be some security clearance, and the emir, the new emir, should also seek clearance or from the governor before because they're expected to provide security. So, it's so funny that when a bandit was now given this title, was now turbaned, I was wondering, okay, could it be that other bandits rally to provide the security that's around the place, so that at the time, so that the governor has done what he did was not funny. Well of the state, or so that the governor was in charge. It did show that even the emir knew his people very well. I tell me that he didn't know the effect of that, because his name is all over the place. So, and somebody should have whispered to him that, come on, this man you want to ban, he has his hands in this banditry. So, but what happened? What went wrong? I mean, it also says a lot about the people. If the governor did not know or was not informed, and the emir was not informed, and nobody around that area could tell the emir about the activities of these bandits, it shows that bandits is becoming a normal thing in Zamfara. Criminality is what is happening in Zamfara, and it's very sad.
Okay, let's take another, maybe go to another paper, and let's come back to Mukhtar in the studio. And our next paper is the Punch. And today's Punch also, of course, like almost all the papers this morning, lead with the Osun election. And the main lead story says, face up with Arebeshola, cost Oyetola re-election. According to the minister's faction, we are assessing outcome of Paul Oyetola to talk after consultation, according to the aide. And then Buhari, Atiku, Saraki, governors Hel Adeleke, governor-elect promises to perform. Ocean Paul indicates Ige's voice resounds from the grave, says Shoyinka. And on the very top of the page, marketers finally hike petrol price to 170 to 190 per liter. Story on page 21. And below that, Tinubu, Shetima, APC pick best winning combination, says Adamu. It's a story on page 7. And on page 8, there's a story saying ASU, NLC plans national protest, police demand notification. Senate orders Nimasa DG's arrest over $9 billion loss. Story on page 24. And then just beside the masthead, importers shun eastern ports over insecurity, others shippers. And then UBA boost foreign expansion, begins operations in Dubai. Story on page 23. And of course, below the lead story is a pictorial showing jubilant members of the People's Democratic Party celebrating Adeleke's victory in Osun State yesterday. And below the pictorial, monkeypox cases hit 101, highest in 5 years. Story on page 16. And beside that, Michael beats Gazama Teddy to emerge NBA president. Story on page 14. Buhari, Sanwo-Olu, APC, Mons, Kemi Nelson. And then below that, name Northerner campaign DG, Babachir Panel tells Tinubu. Lagos Bisman accuses police of extortion, petitions IG. Story on page 4 and 5. And then lastly, Lagos Ibadan, Julius Berger repairs long bridge after Punch report. So these are stories on the front page of today's Punch. Now, having discussed politics almost exhaustively, and of course, we're going to discuss more on the outcome of the Osun election in the next hour. Let's talk about this perennial fuel wahala and the fuel scarcity and the pricing and all that. So marketers have now unofficially because it was not sanctioned by the government, but officially among themselves, they have decided to hike fuel price between 170 and 190. I know that in Abuja we buy at 185. Yes, in some places even over 200, 230 and all that. But maybe now the consensus is between these figures. What are your thoughts about this fuel? Will this be the line for government to, are they forcing the hands of the government? Because they have been talking about removal of subsidy, advocating and all that. Will this force the hand of government to now take action?
It's so funny how almost everybody in the country, every faction in the country is trying so hard to cajole the government, and the government seems so docile about it. But in the aspect of fuel, I would remember I was speaking to one of the head of the business departments, for Enyo, I think, and I was trying to find out what really is the cause of the fuel scarcity, the brouhaha around it. And he was explaining to me that since January, the government has not paid transporters their money. Now, for each time they transport fuel down to any part of the country, they are using their own costs, which is not that profitable for them to actually move the fuel around. Abuja, if you notice, the fuel scarcity was in some parts and not in some parts, I think at the beginning. Abuja is central. For each time they go to areas like Katsina, they go to areas like, they go to Lagos and other places. These are border states where they can actually sell to the states and then sell the remainder to us. They have a secondary market. There's a secondary market aside from the primary market. But Abuja is too central, so there's no secondary market. So it's quite difficult for them to actually move goods to Abuja and still make money. So because of that, they had to find a way to push the button of the government where it hurts the most, which is the Federal Capital Territory. And it's very, very sad because we would remember that one of the few things that this government, one of the legs that they had to stand on was, there's no longer any fuel subsidy, no fuel scarcity. That was the thing of the past. And now we're having it even worse than we've actually ever had it before. and it's sad and it's painful. And we're hoping that they can actually find a more lasting solution. Removal of fuel subsidy is one way to go. If you read the comprehensive document, I think there was one there was an explanation some time ago. I was in Kaduna State Government House where we're having a conversation around it. And if you see, the government has a shortfall as it is, and removal of the subsidy is one way to go to ensure that they can actually meet up. But it does not favor the average man, because we still rely heavily on secondary means of power. So if you're thinking of removing the fuel subsidy, where anybody who wants to get fuel is a luxury, because then you have to use it for your car, then ensure that there's stable power in the country, so that those of us who live below the $1 per day, those people who live below the $1 per day margin, who can barely feed themselves, don't have to think of how to ensure that they can actually provide secondary sources of power for themselves. That way, you can confidently remove it, and then you know that whoever is going to the filling station to actually get fuel is out of is because of luxuries, necessities, because you want to fuel your car and you want to move around. Because that of the generators are actually one of the major problems that we're having.
All right, let's hear from Hajia. Hajia, a lot of people, especially the masses, are actually happy about the fact that at least, even with the increase, there's availability of fuel right now. Do you think these prices have come to stay?
Can you take that question again?
I said the masses, a lot of people are actually excited, that at least right now, even, due to the increase, that, there's availability of fuel. So they could just, go into a filling station and, get, fuel whenever they want. Do you think the increase in, the price of petrol has actually come to stay?
Well, I do not agree with you. I do not agree with you because government should not shroud things in mystery or in controversies. Government should come out straight to tell us what actually the problems are. Removal of subsidy or no removal of subsidy or not of subsidy, the government pays to call them. So government can keep quiet and explain. That's the essence of governance. Don't throw it. Let them suffer. Let them be buying it at market 250 naira. And then it's now officially becomes to a 170, 175, 180. They would have adjusted. That's not how things are done. We want explanation. And we deserve to be explanation. What happened? We're not subsidizing. The only thing I can say, diesel has really gone up. I mean, like over 800 or so. So the trucks themselves use diesel. So for that reason, if there's no intervention from government, diesel has been deregulated. So it's now up to them to sell at the cost that they think they'll be able to make that marginal profit. And that's not good for us. We need to be told, because if you are running a system that is totally above, and there's competition in everything from even the exploration of oil, where we are today, getting, there will be competition. Then we'll be that this one is telling us, this one is also price, I'll make this choice. It will be opportunity, because the oil industry is what government relies on for funds. So from the beginning of it to the end product, government is involved. If government is involved in all that, they should do wrong that. Suddenly, there was no official announcement yet. We're now buying the product, we're now buying the price that the government has fixed. Why were they fixing before? If they didn't think the government was necessary. If suddenly something happened, we deserve to buying it at 250 or over 200 to the sense of government. Otherwise, it's a jungle.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's quickly also have a look at another story on the front page of Punch, talking about an NLC asking for members to embark on a two-day protest to, in reaction to the lingering ASU strike. This has been 5 months since ASU embarked on strike without any solution. Why do you think, this strike is going on for this long and without any, the two sides coming into an agreement?
Well, I would do to those in charge of education. I know that they mean well. I think part of the problem we're having is there seems to be no action about us. Also, only we are seeing that negotiation on they go for the sake of they get to this level, that's happening, and the only that needs that is working on this. The one that is the IS, the one that is by us. So I know on that. We have been at home for over 5 months. It's not good for their we know that there are no jobs. Personal development happening. So they are strike weary, tired of strike. I just wish that I could come up with another means of negotiating with government without having to go on strike, because ultimately the parents and even the society are the biggest brunt of all this strike. Let's not think that okay, I don't have a child in the university now, or I'm not involved. No, a generation that is coming up being stunted. No, the strike cannot be the solution. The government also needs to strike cannot be the only solution. I want to put it right. The government should also step up its intervention so that we get it right. I mean, why does it have to be like this every now and then?
All right, Hajia. Let's move on to another newspaper. We have the Nigerian Tribune on our list right now. And at the top of the page, we have ASU strike, talking about, the NLC to embark on nationwide solidarity protest. And then we also have, a rider that says ASU may suspend strike conditionally tomorrow. All right, we also have Feni Ferrer saying Buhari's directive to army to wipe out terrorists not backed by action. And then we also have, winners. The lead story talks about the Osun elections. And then we have just below the pictorial of the winners and losers of the Osun elections, we have Knox Trail reps move to take over all surface, underground water, tributaries, interstate rivers as diaspora groups, kick against plot to control boreholes, pipe-borne water. We also have World Bank deploys $114.9 billion to finance global crisis in 2022. Now let's hear your thoughts on, Afeni Ferrer talking about Buhari's directive to wipe out terrorists not backed by actions, because he's given this particular directive more times than I can actually count, but it seems like, the security situation keeps, worsening in Nigeria. What are your thoughts on this? Yes.
I think I agree with Afenifere. Because what's happening now? What's happening now is it's as if it is now a script. Once the government wants to react to any security breach, just change a few words and push it to the public. We want to see actions. We want to. I am not saying enough. I mean, they are overwhelmed. But we cannot continue with excuses. Everything over. No one, you cannot sleep with eyes. Even in the capital of this country, there are threats all over us, and you know about Kuje, and not just about pockets of here and there. We are tired of this scripts that is rolled out every now and then. Action. That's not that there are, because said that for every security picture of a lot must have been or stopped. We tell them they go to more protection, because that's the essence of government. You need to, apart from welfare, you need to protect the people that you are governing. So it's no longer, there was a sign that it's not as safe, as safe as probably thought after the attack on his advanced team in Katsina, his own home. I think we need more of organizations in the country. Right.
Okay, so Mr. Mukhtar, let's hear your thoughts. We're actually talking about a story on Nigerian Tribune about Afenifere saying that the president's directive to army to wipe out terrorists is not backed by action.
We've seen the president do a lot of talking over the past, since when this insecurity issue became a major national issue, and we've not really seen much being done. This is not to underestimate the work of our army officers, of the military men. They're really doing well, but speaking to some of my friends who are in the military, and for most of them, they feel like there is no political will from those people who are from the executive class, let me put it that way. So there is this reluctance of some sort, because for me personally, as a citizen, as a private citizen of Nigeria, I find it appalling that a group of people could hold the country to ransom and we can do little to nothing about it. The president have done a lot of speaking, a lot of warning. The most shocking for me, if I may use that, is the president asking us how the last attack on the Kuje prison, how that happened on a tweet. That came off very, very. I was taken aback when I saw that, and there's so little being done. And this, I will also link this up with the story earlier that we were discussing about the bandit who was crowned Serkin Fulani in Zamfara State. When I saw that story yesterday, I was surprised. I was really, really surprised, because I would remember some years ago that guy was one of the most wanted persons. We couldn't find him, and now he was at a turbaning ceremony with hundreds of people. If you see the pictures that came out of that event, you saw a lot of people there. And it was a good thing this morning when we woke up and we saw the news. I saw the alert this morning where the governor has actually suspended the emir and the entire thing is under investigation. But there are two things for me I see in this kind of situations, these insecurity situations, is if the government does not know, it speaks a lot about their irresponsibility. If they do know, it speaks a lot about their position in the country.
That's a heavy, pregnant, last word. And let's look at the Nation newspaper now. Okay, the lead story on the Nation, as I said, of course, today's papers are all about Osun, and it's on Osun. Adeleke PDP celebrate as Oyetola studies results. Governor calls for Buhari outcome Osun people's will. Abdul Salami panel decries vote by. And then, of course, on if we go back to the top of the page, ex-CJN 14 Supreme Court justices for probe over corruption. Story on page 5. And then Muslim ticket shouldn't be an issue, says Pastor Bakari. And banks adjust forex sell policy as dollar scarcity persists. Dangote, Ovia, Emefiele, others for Zenith Bank seminar. Story on page 5. And then Custom confirms plan to auction 7,000 uncleared vehicles. Then, below, there's a story of saying Labour plans 2-day protest over ASU strike. And then lastly, on the red strip down the page, UBA explodes $7.7 trillion market with Dubai expansion. Expectant mother, 11 others abducted. Story on page 2. These are so many shades of issues on the Nation this morning. But let's look at this statement by Pastor Bakari and marry it with what the outcome of the Osun election, which we had earlier discussed. How do you see it? Do you think that at the end of the day, especially with what happened in Osun, that Nigerians will be able to vote this, irrespective of religious or ethnic background of candidates?
I think we can't rule out the reality. One of the major factors that we have in Nigeria is the religiousness of our country. We are not a secular country like most people say. On paper, we might come off as a secular country, but there are a lot of our laws that are backed by our religious nuances, and we're cultural people, we're religious people, so you can't take that away from us. But I don't think Pastor Bakari is going to be of the most objective person to actually give this opinion, because obviously he's a card-carrying member of the party, of the All Progressives Congress. But like I said, we looked at the Osun election. We saw that that didn't really play a role in the deciding factor of how the election turned out, which is a good thing. And we're moving toward more newer climes, and we're hoping that the trajectory that we've actually faced, that we have now, is actually something that's sustainable. Because if you look at the country, religion is somewhat infinitesimal to the face of the economic turmoil that we're facing. It's somewhat infinitesimal to the face of the insecurity that we are having. And unless we band together and try as much as possible to see how we can actually save face as a country, because if you travel outside the shores of Nigeria, we are no longer being as respected as we were before. And all of these are just accumulation of so many things, and all of us facing issues that are not really as pertinent. Religion is a personal relationship with God, and I don't think it should take that much of precedent over who rules and who doesn't rule. If I'm sick today, I go to the hospital. The first question I don't ask the doctor, what tribe are you, or where are you from? Are you a Muslim or a Christian? Before I sit down for treatment. And I think we should treat it the same way. We should treat the nation the same way.
All right, Hajia Zainab, now let's take a look at the story on the ex-CJN and 14 Supreme Court justices for probe over, corruption. On one hand, we're seeing this, probe over corruption, and on the other hand, we're actually seeing, the court ordering an upward review of some of these justices' salaries. What are your thoughts on this?
Probing Supreme Court judges.
Hello?
Hello, I'm asking, what's the question exactly?
Okay, yeah, the question is, what are your thoughts? We want to hear your thoughts on, the probe over the corruption and what you feel, about, the upward review of salaries of justices, considering that, there's a lot of, considering the economic crisis and what the masses are actually going through at the moment.
Yes.
Okay, the line wasn't, I think
Yeah,
I
it's like
got
we are
what you
losing
were
you.
trying to say.
Well, and we are running out of time. So perhaps if the line is not helpful, we can maybe call it a day with
No,
you.
but
And
I can hear you now. I can hear you now. And I
okay, so
think
please go on.
the upward review of the salaries of Supreme Court judges is a welcome development. During the letter that was which basically is of their welfare. The government to think of moving them now. The timing is wrong because some changes have just taken place. And then based on that, they don't want not absorbing them any. If they are corrupt, they should be proved just like others. But I don't know, right? Because it looks like because we come our losers, I think they should be more tactical. This is not. No. They should be. Let people if they are guilty.
Okay, thank you very much for sharing these thoughts and for being with us this morning. Ajia Zainab Okino, Chair of the Blueprint Newspapers Editorial Board, and we hope to have you another time. And of course, we also in the studio, Mr. Mukhtar Suleiman, a public affairs analyst, who will of course stay back with us to discuss on the other issues in the next hour. But with this, we wrap up this first segment of Daybreak on Trust Television. And the show continue on top of the next hour. Thank you very much. Do stay with us.